Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie Larkin, book developer, coach, publisher, and head penguin at Red Penguin Books, a publishing company for authors of all genres. Whether you have a manuscript all ready to go or something just kind of stuck in your head for decades even, unleash your inner author and visit us at redpenguinbooks.com. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors for sponsoring our show, Don Pablo Coffee. If you're a follower of this show, you know my two favorite drinks are coffee and wine. Well, it's late, so we're up to the wine. But Don Pablo Coffee chooses every single coffee bean individually, so you never get a bad cup. And also, Joe Faulese Law Firm. He's a lawyer and an accountant, so you don't have to have your lawyer and your accountant fighting over things. It's all rolled into one. It's a great way to save stress and money. Joe Faulese Law Firm. Please call him. You won't be sorry. So I am so excited today to have not just an author, but a teacher of writing, so we can talk about the actual craft of writing, author William McGee. Thank you.
So nice to be here.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you.
This.
Adore the book.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
It's a really fat book this week. Sorry, everyone.
It's okay.
But it was worth every read of it. But the book is fabulous, and I'm so excited to have a creative writing teacher, like right here on the couch, so we can, because we have so many authors who are watching the show, and talk about the craft of writing.
Well, I'm sure much of your audience is on Long Island, Queens, Brooklyn. Am I
They're
right?
somewhere nearby, yes.
Yeah,
Although we do have audience as far away as England, California, all over the place today. In fact, one of our guest authors today has to Skype in because they couldn't be here.
Right. Well, so I'm originally from Queens. That's where I grew up, and I spent many years on Long Island. I have a lot of ties to the area. So I was thrilled when you called me and asked me to come.
Well, you're from Queens, so you must root for the right team, the Mets, right?
Well, I'm also a contrarian. I always have been. So when I was a little boy, and every single kid on my block was rooting for Tom Seaver and the Mets. I grew up in Jackson Heights, about a mile and a half from Shea Stadium at the time.
And
of course I rooted for the fourth place Yankees, not the first place Mets.
Okay, so it was nice having Bill here on the show. We won't be seeing him anymore. Yeah, you know, you have to understand, I'm from a Met household.
Well, I do have to point out, though, we're going to be talking a lot tonight, I'm sure, about fiction versus nonfiction. So I've taught courses in both fiction and nonfiction. The narrator of my novel, Half the Child, is Michael Mullen, also from Queens, and he is a diehard Met fan.
Well, thank God somebody has taste.
Well, it was very hard for me to write those portions of the novel in which, you know, he's disparaging the Yankees and
so now we know it's really fiction.
Absolutely.
It must be fiction.
That puts that to rest once and for all.
Absolutely.
Anyone who knows me and read that knows that Bill McGee would never
ever,
saying,
ever.
You know, let's go Mets.
All right, I'll still like you. I'm glad you didn't wear a Yankee shirt. Our son knows enough to be a Met fan, but his little friends, you know, growing up, just to irk us, would wear a Yankee shirt to the house, and we'd make them strip right there in the foyer. No Yankee shirts in this house, man.
Well, I had a rather traumatic experience a few years ago. My son was in college in Boston, about a half a mile from Fenway Park. So for a while there, I was nervous he might slip into the dark side one night. But thankfully, he's a good kid, and he remains a Yankee fan. I raised him right.
Well, before we get to books and all sorts of things, we have two little giveaways for our audience. One is that we are very, very fortunate that our show is getting seen all over the world, thousands of times, and a lot of that is because people are sharing our show. So you better share, and if you share, then your name will be in the basket next week. So this is all of the sharers. It would be nice if Facebook made my life easy and gave me a nice little list, but I had to actually sit there and copy and paste everyone who shared the show this week. So would you please see who our lucky winner is of our book giveaway for the best sharer of the week?
Stephen Tayano.
Oh, wow. Okay. Stephen Tayano. Thank you, Stephen, for sharing the show. We will be sending a copy of the book for you. Thank you so much. And we also have today's quote of the day. Okay. Every week we have a book quote, and we hope that our very well-read viewers, we had one week that the quote was way too hard, but if you know this quote, you're please going to call 516 945-9099. And here is our quote for the day. You're not allowed to answer because you're a professional. Okay? Our quote is, but I think the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Let's see if any of our viewers know that quote for today. The phone number again was 516-945-9099 for our quote of the day. I will give one little hint. It is a little seasonal. That's as much as I'll say. It's a little bit seasonal. I know the professional over here knows that quote.
I think I knew it when I was about 5.
2 hints. 2 hints for the quote. We are very lucky that we're going to go to commercial in just a second, but after that we have an author from Nigeria. Of course, he's not going to be with us today, so we are going to have our author visiting us via Skype. So let's have a word from our sponsors and then be back with our guest author, besides you. You're right here in the flesh. Thanks for joining us.
Me llaman Dan Pablo y hace más de 20 años me enamoré de una colombiana. Viajé a su país y conocí un estilo de café muy distinto, muy especial. Ahora tostamos cafés excelentes, con alturas y microclimas diferentes, resultado en una taza muy compleja y muy rica, un sabor nuevo en el mundo. Fue un éxito. And I even got to keep the girl.
A book, either in your head or on your desk, just waiting to get out to anxious readers? Hi, I'm Stephanie Larkin, author, book developer, and head penguin at Red Penguin Books. We're a publishing company specializing in books of all genres and publishing in all formats, including digital, audible, and print books. From business books to romance, memoirs to mysteries, our authors have complete control over their books from start to print. We'll help get your book to booksellers all around. Major booksellers such as Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Walmart, even libraries and bookstores around the world. We believe in our authors. So call or email today to get your free publisher's packet to get started. Just visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and get your book out there and into the hands of your readers. At Red Penguin Books, you call all the shots. So call us today and turn your dreams into a reality. Welcome back. Welcome back to Between the Covers. We are so excited today to have a guest author. Robert Nwadrio wrote Nigeria, a Failed State. Well, I don't know too much about Nigeria. Well, I'm lying. I read the book, so now I do. But we're going to get to hear it from the source. So please welcome with me author Robert Nwadrio. Hi, Robert. How are you?
I am fine.
Oh, thank you so much for joining us. I know you can't see us, but we can see you, and they can see me holding your book right here.
That's fine.
Fantastic. Tell us a little bit about it. Why did you write this book?
I have been writing for the past 30 years.
30 years? Wow.
I'm not really a new writer. I've been writing, but I've been writing newspaper and magazine articles.
Okay, that's a real writer. That counts.
Yeah. So now I want to write books. This work, although it's the second edition.
But and this is the second edition already. So there was a first edition before this.
Yes.
Okay. Now, when you wrote this, what was your goal in writing the book?
My goal is still the same. And the world is a village, but a big one. So when you are, in fact, at one end of the village, you don't know what is happening on the other side. And people in the West are frustrated about Africa, Nigeria in particular. They know little or nothing about Nigeria. So that is why I want to let them know what is happening there, because the situation is not getting better.
You're absolutely right. We don't know anything about, and Nigeria is the largest country in Africa.
Yes, it is.
And yet we know nothing.
That is the problem. That is the problem. You see, here people describe Africa with different terms. Some describe it as benighted people and a land of possibility.
Yes.
But the problem, you don't blame the people out here that give that description. Rather, you blame the situation squarely on the leadership where it belongs. Because unless you do well, nobody will recognize you. That's the problem. So, and that is what we are doing now. We want people to know the situation there, because one thing has been constant in Nigeria for the past 50 years, that the last government was better than this government. If what we have today, tomorrow we say that our last government was better than this government, then it's total eclipse. So, and that nobody wants that.
Oh, I understand that. Sure, absolutely. You called the book Nigeria a failed state with a question mark. So you're asking the reader, is it a failed state?
You see, when you talk of a failed state, people are really misunderstand it. They go for the technical definition of a failed state. But we don't have it again in the world. Time has overtaken events. Nigerian leaders make reference to one African country that is they call a failed state. That is Somalia. But since the president of Somalia left Mogadishu and settled in Lagos and later died there, and Somalia has never been without structures. They were even the first African country to produce a woman vice president.
Wow.
But what do you see there? What happened there even last week? What do you have? In fact, the present figures presented by the UN, they show that Somalia takes, in fact, among the first place in the world of where you have crisis and murder. So a failed state is not when the country ceases to exist. No, we don't have it again. But when the structures are there, there's no due process. Election is fraudulent. Everything is fake. The leaders are not, there is no accountability, there's no transparency. Then the movement is always one step forward and 9 steps backwards. The country is indeed a failed state.
Wow, and we thought we were having problems here.
Yes.
Absolutely. I'm sitting here with Bill, who is a fiction writer also. But, the scary thing is this is not fiction. This is what's really happening in Nigeria today.
Yes, current affairs is not fiction.
No, it's actually... Now, you go through a lot of things in your book.
From the start.
You go through the economy and all sorts of things.
References. So it's not a fiction, it's current affairs.
No, it's absolutely current affairs.
But the thing is that it doesn't tell everything about the situation, because the situation is still evolving every day. Because the leadership is not transparent, there's no due process. They don't care. We may cry, but they don't care. The thing is still happening. So that's why I have the book in different chapters. Probably we discuss that.
Yes, absolutely. I know you have sections on mineral resources, the election, international relations, electricity, security, tourism, population, abandoned projects, and anti-graft structures. So you go through all of these different things.
That is really what makes the book unique. Others choose just one topic and go about it. Some of them are just define what is corruption and what should be done to an offender. But they don't choose different topics. All those topics you see there is corruption in every one of them.
Even in tourism?
Yeah. Tourism goes, that's why tourism is 5B. 5A is security.
Yes, I see that.
There is nowhere tourism will flourish in a place without security.
No, that's
place
true.
Without security, there's nobody wants to go there.
No, I don't want to go someplace without security.
In fact, if you can forget North America and Europe. Latin American countries, most of them depend on tourism.
Right.
And they have security. But Nigeria has a better weather than Latin America. Nigeria doesn't have a hurricane. There's no earthquake. There's nothing of those natural disasters. But insecurity has robbed the country of tourism, and nobody cares.
Wow.
If you make anybody minister of tourism, the person starts to cry. They call it a dry ministry because they don't have much money to embezzle.
My goodness. What could we do? You know, I would love all of us to read and get to know more, because not just because you're here as one of our guest authors, but because Nigeria is the largest country in Africa. And Africa is a huge continent, and we are so woefully ignorant about what goes on there. What could we do besides knowledge?
I really commend that question because, as I said earlier, people are frustrated. The West is frustrated on Nigeria. Mm-hmm. Before, when the country was good, you can see my subtitle. Profound treaties on a crippled giant. Nigeria was a giant.
Yes, yes.
No, it's no joke. Nigeria was a giant. Yes. In the past, the West consulted Nigeria before making decisions on Africa up to Middle East. And most of the multinationals in Nigeria, especially in oil and gas and communications, they have what they call regional headquarters in Nigeria, and that extends to Middle East. Because Nigeria was stable in those days, diplomats lobbied their government to go to Nigeria, and when they go there, they don't want to go. If I tell you people now that there was a time when Nigerian currency was stronger than dollar, you wouldn't believe it. You think I'm joking. It's true. In the 70s and early 80s, once it was one Nigerian currency to $10, US dollars.
Oh.
In fact, people in those days will walk into any shop in New York and London and shop and pay with Nigerian currency.
Wow.
But no longer that way.
Oh.
And what made it that way is corruption. It's visionless leaders who don't care. There's no transparency. They do what they like.
Wow.
If you people know what is happening there now, because there will be presidential election first quarter of next year, from local government to the national level, is chaos.
Right.
Nobody cares. You can count the number of murders. In one state in particular, in fact, that is one of the states there, 3 Catholic priests have been murdered since the beginning of this year.
Just since the beginning of this year?
Yes, 3 Catholic reverend fathers have been for telling the governor that you are not doing well. They've been murdered, so they don't care. Those people, they are just devils. So what you people should do is to tell the leaders here about the reality there. But sometimes the leaders over here try to exploit the situation. They're not the leaders, they are weak. So they just go to them and get what they want.
Yeah.
And ignore the situation, and the situation is getting worse.
No, you're right.
It's not good.
You're absolutely right. You know, we have a lot of authors on the show who are writing for entertainment, you know, so that we can read and be entertained, whether it's a thriller novel or a romance or something. This is something that we should read because we need to be informed. Bobby, could you put up the slide again with the picture of the book and maybe our author's name so that everyone can see where the book is? Thank you so much. Yeah, this is a book for us to read because we don't know. And there's so much we don't know in this world. Sometimes we read for fun, but this is reading to learn something. Robert, I really appreciate you coming on and telling us, because I know that before I got your book, I knew nothing. And I certainly don't know nearly as much as you do, but I feel as if I at least can read the news now and have a little bit of appreciation of what it means and how it's going to affect the global community, because it's a whole world, and the world is huge, yet it's very, very small, and one thing affects another. And I really thank you, not just for the unbelievable amount of research that went into writing a book like this, because the research is just enormous, but for the gift that you've given to all of us that we can learn more about it. So I hope that our readers, our viewers, are going to take a peek And thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for all of your work on behalf of the Nigerian people and on behalf of the world community. We're just going to take a quick commercial break. Robert, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you in a minute.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
The sun is getting warmer, but when we soar away among the clouds, the sky is just a border, but when we're floating up like helium.
Do you have a book, either in your head or on your desk, just waiting to get out to anxious readers? Hi, I'm Stephanie Larkin, author, book developer, and head penguin at Red Penguin Books. We're a publishing company specializing in books of all genres and publishing in all formats, including digital, audible, and print books. From business books to romance, memoirs to mysteries, our authors have complete control over their books from start to print. We'll help get your book to booksellers all around. Major booksellers such as Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Walmart, even libraries and bookstores around the world. We believe in our authors. So call or email today to get your free publisher's packet to get started. Just visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and get your book out there and into the hands of your readers. At Red Penguin Books, you call all the shots. So call us today and turn your dreams into a reality. Welcome back. Welcome back to Between the Covers. Well, we had our heavy section of the show about things that we really need to know more about. You know, during the commercial break, Bill and I were talking about Africa. And really interesting what you were mentioning about being a travel writer, and just the fact that when you were writing travel articles, or whoever was writing the travel articles, if they wrote about, you know, Egypt one month, they couldn't write about Kenya the next month. They said, oh, you already wrote about Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I write about aviation and the airlines. I have for years. I've written for many travel magazines. And I have many friends and colleagues that would write about destinations. And they used to talk about that, you know. Well, we just did a piece on Africa, you know. And you would never say, well, we just did a piece on Italy, so we're not going to write about France. Or you'd never say, just did a piece on Spain, so we won't write about England, you know.
Exactly. And even if we just did a piece on Rome, you'd still write about Venice.
Absolutely. Right,
you know,
absolutely.
We just have a very different perception.
It's just this monolith that was like, you know, this continent that there is still in this, you know, at this time there's still so much ignorance. Really.
And yet, I wish I had the slide up, but I mentioned to you seeing one of those maps that they show, this is the size of Africa, and then here's how the entire world, it could fit like
huge.
4 continents in there.
Absolutely.
You know, we have no appreciation. We think it's just one big Lion King thing. I don't know.
Right. No, I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah.
So you went from the travel industry and writing about aviation, and now I'm terrified to ask you whether I should fly or not.
Well, you'll just have to have me back for another.
I'm going to have to have you back for a
right?
second time because.
And we'll talk about my first book, Attention All Passengers.
See,
nonfiction
he's over here for a novel, and now I'm thinking I'm going to hear about the nonfiction book.
They are both available on Amazon.
Okay, you hear that?
William J. McGee, MC, capital G-E-E. Since you asked.
Yes, well, I know they have a slide up for you every once in a while with your book and your website. Absolutely. Yeah. About the novel, yes. Because, wow, we're going to talk about a lot of things, because you write novels and you write nonfiction.
Yes.
Are they the same thing?
No, it's an excellent question. I also, you know, as we were talking, I taught creative writing for 10 years at a college right here on Long Island, in
Right.
Hempstead, on Hempstead Turnpike. You could probably figure out what.
I could figure out which
yeah.
one. See, we're on a nonfiction show, so we're allowed to say which college it was.
Well, okay, all right.
Unless we're worried about our Break
No,
My
no,
Professor
not at all.
things or
Actually,
something.
I graduated from Hofstra as well, and I taught there for 10 years.
Okay.
And I taught both fiction and nonfiction, and that question came up all the time.
Right.
You know, students would be struggling with the work, and my answer was that I think there are more similarities than dissimilarities.
Yes.
And I really believe that. Now, Mark Twain had this great quote, which I'm going to mangle a little bit, that the difference between, he called it truth. The difference between fiction and truth is that fiction has to make sense. Okay? And I did mangle a little bit, but that's basically the essence of it. And, he's right.
Right.
Because certainly in this day and age, I know there's a lot of distrust of journalism on all sides, but for the most part, when you write something down as a memoir and you said such and such happened, many people will believe you. Fiction is actually, it's in the fiction workshops where
Right.
somebody would read something, one of my students would read, and then you see 15 people shaking their heads, nah, I don't buy that. No, I don't believe that. I don't think it would happen that way.
Right.
You know, whereas it was memoir, you say, wow, that happened?
Wow,
Huh,
that
that's
happened.
some
You believe
story.
it. Exactly.
So it's actually flipped, I think, from the way most people think, that, a fiction writer can sit down and do whatever they want.
Right.
It's really, I think in many ways, the rules are stricter for fiction than for nonfiction.
Interesting. Well, it's funny when you first arrived tonight, and I said, "Listen, I'm so excited to have a writing professor, not just an author, but a writing professor on the show. That's upping our ante here. So let's take notes." And I said, I want to discuss some things in writing. And you said, like what? I said, like what is truth? and you looked at me like, and how long is the show?
Right. Exactly. Well, it is a sofa, I guess. So we can
We're
just take a
gonna
nap in
need
between.
those priests
Yeah.
back that were on the show last week.
Yeah, right.
What is truth? And that's a big question, especially fiction. Like you said, we assume it's not true. I love when we have authors on that are writing fantasy, and I'm certainly never going to say that any genre is easy to write, but I guess one of the gifts of writing fantasy is we all expect it to be fantastic.
Right.
We don't expect it to make sense in a traditional, at least gravity doesn't work in these books, and,
Right.
things are, especially when we're dealing with whether it's science fiction or some of our authors are dealing with the supernatural or the paranormal or something, and then it's like, cool. So that's kind of wild, but that's okay.
Yeah, but even there has to be what writers call interior
believe it.
interior logic.
Right.
So I've never really been a science fiction aficionado. I've
Right.
read a little, but or fantasy or anything. But even a comic book has to make sense. And
It
a
does.
5-year-old knows that if kryptonite makes Superman weak, and he's sitting next to kryptonite, and he's not. And
Weak,
it's not affecting
right.
him. There better be a reason. He has
Right.
on an asbestos suit or something.
Exactly.
You
Well,
have
there's-
to explain why that is.
There's got to be that consistency.
Even children know that, absolutely.
Things
So,
have to work all the time.
Reindeer can fly, and men can fly, and women can fly, and all that stuff, but
Every
there
single
has to be
time.
logic to why that is.
Right. And you do have to explain why.
Absolutely.
If you're dealing with humans, I mean, some of our authors are not dealing with humans, to be
Right,
honest.
right.
But even there, if you're going to get me to believe this stuff, I can't be sitting there saying, nah, that can't
Right.
be. I should be sucked in. If you're a good writer, I should be sucked in.
Well,
thinking
and
it's
so that
believable.
does bring me back, I think, to to more literary fiction, like Half the Child, in that there's interior logic there too.
Yes.
Because the last thing you want is for someone to invest in reading, say 200 or 300 pages of a novel, and then get to a point where a character does something, and the author says, "No, I don't buy it. She wouldn't do that. He wouldn't say that."
Right.
And so, I think it's a fallacy if people think you can sit down and write fiction and just do whatever you want. 'cause
No,
making
you're
it up.
absolutely right. It has to be continuous.
Absolutely.
When I read, page 300, she or he or whoever it is has to be saying something that reflects the character that has been building for the past
Absolutely.
300 pages.
And-
I have to believe.
And that's the hard part of writing fiction.
Yes.
I say this all the time, but much of what I write, particularly fiction, long before I ever sit in front of a keyboard, it's I'm driving, I'm
Right,
watching
right.
baseball, I'm sleeping or whatever. I'm thinking about those characters, and for me, that's why it's about character more than plot. They're both important,
Okay.
and I'd like to think that Half the Child has both, has
Yes.
strong characters and a strong plot. But the characters are what drive the plot. Because in other words,
Yes.
you can come up with the most, terrific plot line in the world. If you don't really care what's going to happen to those characters, do they live or die, get married, whatever it's going to be, you're not invested.
I've
So
heard
it's
that
the character.
statement before. Stephen King on writing says that same statement, that it's about the characters.
Right.
And it's, not that the plot isn't important. I mean, Stephen King, he thinks up these
Sure.
really interesting plots.
Absolutely.
But if we don't care about the characters, you lost us. We're done.
Yeah.
We're just
You have to be
done
invested
already.
in them.
Yeah.
And I don't think, the greatest plot in the world won't work if you're not invested in caring about
Yeah.
the characters, So for me, the fun part is, once that character is real to you, as the two main characters in my novel, Michael
Right.
Mullen, the father, and Ben Mullen, the
Yes.
son, once they're real to me, then it's fun because then it's almost as if you're outside of the book. You sit down to write a scene, you say, well, what would Michael do there? And what would Ben do there? And how would they react?
I like
and
that.
so they're sort of imaginary friends. When I was a
Right.
kid, as my siblings would be more than happy to tell you, I had a lot of imaginary friends. And
Such a writer.
Right. And one was in the mirror. He only showed up when I showed up. And, I think in some ways I'm still sort of doing that. I think that's what writers of fiction do. You create characters in your head, and then you put them in scenarios. You say, okay, now this is happening.
Right.
How are they going to respond? And if
love
you
that.
can't answer that, then I would say you need to do a little bit more thinking because you're not quite there yet.
I love that. I love that image of knowing your characters so well, like they're sitting right next to you.
Right.
And you could have a conversation and think, what would he respond? What
Right.
would be the natural thing? And if you can't answer that, you're not there yet.
Right. You're not there yet.
You're
And,
definitely not there yet.
So, I mean, I don't know what the ratio is, but the amount of time you spend in front of the keyboard is only part of it. It's also just, I drive long distances. I don't even have the radio on at times. I'm actually saying dialogue out loud with characters. I'm writing scenes in my head. Then I get home and
Okay, that's going to be our first nugget for our authors. I
Okay.
love that. We're just going to take a quick break. I'm going to get a second nugget. Thanks so much.
Me llaman Dan Pablo y hace más de 20 años me enamoré de una colombiana. Viajé a su país y conocí un estilo de café muy distinto, muy especial. Ahora tostamos cafés excelentes, con alturas y microclimas diferentes, resultado en una taza muy compleja y muy rica, un sabor nuevo en el mundo. Fue un éxito. And I even got to keep the girl.
Welcome back. Welcome back to Between the Covers. I'm sitting here with author William McGee, and we are delving into this book, Half the Child, which is only half the story I'm hearing during this interview. We're going to have him back on because there's evidently a whole lot of nonfiction books about travel in the airline industry, and I love travel. And I'm trying so hard not to talk about travel because he's here about this book right now. I also know that William McGee is going to be here on Long Island next week.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
On Tuesday the 11th, I'll be reading from Half the Child and having a discussion at a terrific bookstore, which you probably know, Book
Yes.
Review
Book
in
Review.
Huntington. I think it's one of the largest independent bookstores in the country, let
Yes,
alone on
it's
Long Island.
fantastic.
They're terrific.
I know that it's book review on Tuesday, December.
Tuesday the 11th at 7 p.m.
Okay.
Huntington.
And I will make sure that the link is linked to
Oh,
the
great.
show so that you can all not
Excellent.
only meet him right here on my couch, but
Right.
meet him in person when you're going to be reading.
And the rumor is there will be cookies.
I'll be there, so you can meet me in person because if there's cookies, okay. No guaranteed wine. We serve wine here.
Well, one thing at a time.
All right. One of the things that I found so interesting, now this is the first time I've actually held the book
Right.
in my hand because you were gracious enough to send me a digital copy so I could read it on a Kindle. And, there's nothing like a book, is there?
Oh, wow. You don't have to tell me.
You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely.
I love the
The
convenience.
smell, the touch,
I
all-
know.
everything.
And you sent it to
Feel
me,
of it.
and I so appreciate it because, we
Right.
didn't get to meet until tonight,
Right.
but I got to read the book in advance. And it was great that I read it, but there's nothing like
Well, I'll sign that one for you. That's for
seeing
you.
it. Thank you. But it jumps out at me even more in the print version, but you don't have, I'll call them chapters.
Mm-hmm.
You have book 1, book 2, book 3, and book 4.
Right.
And then you have these, I don't know if our audience can see them, but there are these breaks where he has, dots.
Asterisks, yeah.
That'll break up sections almost like, I'll call them mini chapters. At least somewhere that I could stop and go to bed, finally, because I was up, my husband will tell you, I was up at, 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, reading.
That's the best compliment you can give a writer.
Absolutely. I was reading this book. I could not put the book down, but I would say, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. I need to put this down. And I was waiting for one of those little asterisk breaks for me to stop. And then, of course, I see the next line, and then I had to keep reading because, I won't give it away to our. But if I opened to that,
yes.
okay, I had to keep going.
I see why.
I mean, if you read that, now it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and you're reading and you're reading and you're reading. But it was an interesting, and I wanted to ask you why you did it, but I also have my own opinion why you did it. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure if my opinion was correct.
What do you think? You tell me first.
Well, so many authors nowadays write these, kind of short 3-page chapters, and you just keep kind of breezing through. And some of your, I'll call them fake chapters, for lack of a better word. I'm sure there's a fancy word for it. Some of them were long.
Right.
Some of them went on for pages. Some of them were short. In fact, my favorite chapter of all time was one line. Can I read that line? It's not going to give
Absolutely.
anything away.
No.
The line of my favorite one, and I had to read it over and over, was, by early August, the tan line where my wedding ring had been has disappeared. That was its own chapter. The tan line where my wedding ring had been has disappeared. And it's funny, just now on the commercial break when I said to you, oh, I want to find my favorite chapter, and you said to me,
I said, you'll
is it the wedding ring? I
Right.
said,
I knew what it was. Yeah.
you knew it. And I kind of just sat there and sat with that because it was one line and it was one chapter. If you look, it has the double asterisk. Right. And it said so much. And I guess to me, the fact that you never stopped, and it made me have this feeling like your protagonist, Michael, who just, it never ended. He was on this, downhill. I mean, it was really not a good time.
Yeah.
For the most part, it was not a good time.
Across 4 years.
Yeah. And while it was 4 years, it never stopped.
Yes.
I almost felt like because I couldn't sleep, because I never got to the end of a damn chapter,
Right.
it was like he never slept either.
Right.
And I felt that angst. Is that why you did it?
Absolutely. That's a big part of it. There's two things. One is, yes, the book is divided up into 4 equal sections,
Right.
more or less equal, and they basically detail 4 consecutive summers
Right.
in the life of Michael and his young son Ben, who is 2, 3, 4, and 5. And throughout these 4 summers, their lives are completely disrupted by a divorce between Michael and Ben's mother, and then it leads to a custody struggle, and it
other
eventually
things.
leads to an abduction. I will say that. And I won't go much further than that, though. But you're absolutely right. I wanted to convey a sense of falling and falling and falling and falling and not knowing where bottom is, let alone when you're going to hit bottom.
Right.
And that was exactly what I was trying to do. So
Well,
I
you
very
did
much
it.
appreciate that.
You absolutely did it.
And, I think too often after, an event, we are able to say, well, here's the beginning and here's the end, and this is when World War I started and this is when it ended, and there's a timeline and you can put it out very easy. When we're living life, we don't have a timeline, right?
No.
So we don't know how long a relationship is going to last. We don't know how long a life will last, right? And things can end suddenly, things can go on, things can peter out. They're all different ways.
Yes.
And so that is also why I wrote the book in first person from Michael's perspective.
Right.
Wanted to be completely inside his head.
Yes.
And also in present tense,
Yes.
which is becoming a little bit more popular now, but for the most part, I think 20, 30 years ago, overwhelmingly, most novels were in past tense.
Right.
You're seeing more of it now. And again, I wanted that sense of immediacy. I didn't want him to be years after this experience looking back and
Right.
telling us, you know. When I was teaching creative writing, I used to do an experiment where I would ask students about books they had read. Were they first person or third person? Were they past tense or present tense? And a lot of times, even though they had read it and liked it, they didn't remember.
They
you
didn't
know.
remember.
And a classic example is a book that just about all of us know, To Kill a Mockingbird. And I would ask my students.
The number one beloved book in America,
Right,
as per
right,
the Great American
exactly,
Read that we always.
right. Right. And by the way, it is harder these days. The sort of American canon that many of us of a certain age grew up with, it's harder because in high school, students aren't reading as many. So like you could say The Great Gatsby, Catcher in the Rye, maybe 2/3 of the room, not the entire room. So it's a little
You'd be
harder.
happy to know that everyone who has sat on that couch has read all of those books, because we discussed one week The Great Gatsby, To Kill a Mockingbird. I just heard that To Kill a Mockingbird is coming out with a graphic novel.
Is that right?
Illustrated.
I didn't know that. Wow.
You know, I guess to reach the rest of the world who
Right.
doesn't read these big fat books.
Right, right.
You know, but
Well, yeah. So one time in class, I said, who's the narrator in To Kill a Mockingbird? And everyone said Scout. And I said, how old is the narrator? And everyone said 5, 6. I said, that's how old the narrator is, or that's how old the character Scout is? Obviously, that is written from the perspective of a woman,
yes.
a mature adult, looking back on those events. Okay, she's not 6. It's not. It's
Right,
not a
it's
6-year-old
not a little
vocabulary.
kid writing.
And so for half the child, I didn't want to write
Right.
about an adult looking back, or well, of course he's an adult, but
Right.
someone looking back 20 years. This is what happened.
This is as it's happening in the moment.
If you're shocked, I'm shocked. If he's shocked, you know,
Right.
you feel the shocks along with him.
Exactly.
And it's just
oh boy,
it's like
did
a
I
roller
feel the-
coaster that just
oh
never
my God,
stops.
did I feel the
Yeah.
shocks along with him?
And you know, I mean, at least you get on a roller coaster, you know where it's going to end and when it's going to end. Here, he doesn't know when it's going to end.
Right. I also so appreciated that, you know, while it was from his voice, and he was, you know, I'll call it the hero of the story just because the protagonist, he was so far from perfect. I loved that.
Yeah, he certainly is. He's
You
very,
know.
he's very flawed. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that made us root for him even more.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
You know,
I mean, it
instead
may
of
have
us-
turned off some readers, but that's the risk you
No,
take.
no, you know what?
But
None of us are perfect.
what I wanted to create was a man who's far from perfect, but he has 2 passions in his life basically, and one is his job. He's an air traffic controller at LaGuardia Airport.
Which, by the way, now I'm terrified to fly in and out of LaGuardia Airport after reading
Well,
the
you
book.
just find out if Michael Mullen is on board.
I think I'm going to book through Kennedy just because I read the book.
So he's passionate about that. But the thing he's most passionate about in the whole world is his young son. And he is just determined that he will not live a life separate from his son, and that his son will be in his life and he will be in his son's life. And so when you're on a quest like that, sometimes along the way you can bruise a few people, or
Right.
lose your temper with people and lose your patience with people. But basically, I think what I wanted to create was someone who was just absolutely determined at all costs, whatever it cost, to make sure that his son stayed in his life. And it has negative effects on virtually every aspect of his life.
Right, absolutely.
It affects his career.
Yes,
We won't
everything
get into
is
that,
down the
but
toilet.
it's
Yes.
obviously it's an important job being an air traffic
Yes.
controller. It affects his health, his physical health, his
Right.
mental health,
Right.
his
Everything.
his entire life, his finances. I'll leave unsaid how things work out, but
Right.
he is determined that he is not going to just say, well, I'll walk away from my son.
Right. You know what I loved? In this day and age, we're in a very, I'll say, feminist era, which I am personally, of course, delighted by. But I loved hearing a father speaking out. I don't want us ever to forget the fathers. I'm very, very fortunate with my own dad, who, by the way, is sitting here in the audience cheering us on. So I certainly have a dad that I adore, and I have a husband who is the best father to my children. But I don't know that even I, until I really read the book, really appreciate. We always think the mothers, and I loved reading about a dad.
Well,
that was so huge because, I mean, as I said, I'm a woman. I'm right there with, the women's movement. But I have very important men in my life who adore their children. And I loved reading that perspective, which I hadn't read before.
Right. Well, you raised a big issue. I consider myself a feminist as well. And my whole life I've been surrounded by women. I had a mother who I adored. She's no longer with us. I have 6 sisters.
Yes.
Nieces, sisters-in-law.
Right.
I'm in a relationship now with a woman who's a single mom. I have so many female friends, female bosses over the years, and so it's not in me to ever even have a desire to write a misogynistic book.
It was not that
and this
at all.
was not about.
It was not about that at all. No.
This is about asserting, that a child deserves 2 good parents if they're
Absolutely.
available. Sometimes they're not.
No.
Sometimes one of them is not
Sometimes
so
they're
good. Sometimes
No.
one of them
You're
walks
absolutely
away, or
right.
some of them shouldn't be with kids.
You're absolutely right.
But this is a case where, Michael's position is, I'm not so much bashing his son's mother, but saying he should come first.
Absolutely.
And in the state of New York, where this is set, there's this law term that is used by lawyers and judges called the best interest of the child. Unfortunately, by my informal polling, that happens about 1% of the time.
Right.
Unfortunately, and so it's just about saying, well, it's mothers don't have an exclusive right.
You're absolutely right.
Especially now, and I do think it's important to point out generationally that things have changed.
Well, that's the thing is that we speak about equality, and equality means equality for mothers and fathers.
Absolutely.
Equality means for women and men. Right. And I was so thrilled to be able to read a perspective that, we read mother stories a lot, and to read a father story was just such a rare treat. And as I said, I have men in my life who adore their children, and yet reading it gave me this, wow, so dads really care, even though I knew that.
Right.
And I was so thrilled, and I'm so thrilled for other people to read this because I know that I read a lot. That I read gobs and gobs of books, but hadn't read this perspective. And I was thrilled to read it.
Well, I'm thrilled that you're saying that, and I appreciate it. But I have to point something out, and that is that, when the book was published in July, now the question is, well, how do you promote it? Who are you trying to reach?
Right.
And it's available on Amazon, like I said. It's in
Yes.
Kindle, it's in print. But how do you write that up? And we're trying to figure out, well, how can we appeal to all the dads out there who are good, loving dads who love their kids? Maybe they're in their lives, maybe they're not. And then a funny thing has happened, and that is that it is women that are overwhelmingly responding to this book. Many men have responded positively too. But the idea that this is a book that sort of splinters the audience and is only written by a man for men, is absurd.
No, I was
because
thrilled to read it.
The feedback I've gotten from women has been tremendous.
Oh, I'm glad.
Yes,
I'm glad they're seeing what I'm seeing.
It's great to hear that from you as well. I appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Thank you.
He's going to sign my copy of it right now. We're going to take a quick commercial break and be right back.
The sun is getting warmer, but when we soar away among the clouds, the sky is just a border, but when we're floating up like helium.
Me llaman Dan Pablo y hace más de 20 años me enamoré de una colombiana. Viajé a su país y conocí un estilo de café muy distinto, muy especial. Ahora tostamos cafés excelentes, con alturas y microclimas diferentes, resultado en una taza muy compleja y muy rica. Un sabor nuevo en el mundo. Fue un éxito. And I even got to keep the girl.
Welcome back to Between the Covers. I can't believe that nobody has called with our quote yet. We're going to do our quote one more time. If you know this quote, the phone number is right there on the screen now, 516-945-9099. And here is our quote. But I think that the most likely reason of all may have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. Okay, somebody's got to recognize that quote. No cheating. No cheating. But if you know that quote, please call 516-945-9099. And we are dying to hear from you. So tell me a little bit about what inspired you to write this. I'm telling you why I'm so thrilled that you did write it, but what made you write it?
Well, I'm a single father, and I have a son who's 25, and he's a wonderful young man. He's the love of my life. And this is the part where he'll probably, just turn off the volume, because there goes Dad talking about me again.
I know, well, that's our kids do.
But, there are worse things.
Oh, we have a caller, thank goodness. Hello?
Hi.
Hi! Do you know our quote?
Bill McGee. I went to school with him.
Really? Who is this?
Who is this?
Laura Mendelson.
Oh, wow. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. I'm procrastinating, and then I saw you were on TV, so I put you on.
Great to hear from you.
Pleasure to watch. But the quote is from The Grinch.
All right! Well, I am so glad that you called. And look at this, you're winning a book from a classmate?
Oh, I already have it. My goodness.
Oh, you already have it? Okay, well then.
Yes, you said such lovely things to me about it, Laura. I appreciate it so
Oh,
much.
that's fabulous. Well, Laura, we're going to send you, we have a book from last week's author. We'll send that to you because we're so thrilled that you called and knew the quote. Could you do me a favor and just comment
great.
on the,
Yes.
just throw it in the comments on Facebook so that I know where to send it.
Okay.
Oh, you're the best. And you went to school together.
Yeah, Laura, aren't you
Yes, we went
glad
to
that,
Columbia.
you knew Dr. Seuss for all those student loans that we took out?
Exactly.
Oh, so you went to expensive school
I'm
together.
actually surprised I'm the
Yeah.
one that called because
Yeah.
it's such an easy quote.
We thought it was an easy quote there, but, I was getting a little nervous. We were getting late in the
Yeah.
game with nobody calling.
Well,
I was
never
nervous that I
called
wasn't
into
going to know
anything,
it.
But anyway, the book is great, and did it make you cry?
Oh, my God. Absolutely. My heart was on the floor for half of it.
Okay, yeah, because I love to cry, and so it made me cry.
Oh.
And,
I got to say, I've had about
my
30 women this
recommendation.
summer tell me that I made them cry.
Aw.
I guess that's a good thing.
That
but,
is a good
yeah.
thing. That is a good thing.
Yeah, what's better than crying over a book?
Absolutely. Oh, well, thank you so much for calling.
Thank you, Laura. It's so good to hear from you.
Okay, you take care. Now, you want me to put my name in the
Yeah, just
comments,
put your
or-
name in the comments. Say I won with a big exclamation point.
I'll follow up. Don't
Thank
worry.
you. Oh, that's right. We
Okay,
know
thank
you.
you.
Never mind.
Take care. Merry Christmas.
Okay,
Thank
too.
you.
Thanks.
Well, before we break, let's make sure that we get all of your information. What are you doing? Where can we find you? And where can we buy this book?
Sure. Half the Child is available on Amazon in both print and Kindle forms. And I'll also be reading next week at Book Review Bookstore in Huntington, Long Island. And in the spring, I'm really happy to say I'm going to be a guest lecturer at Long Island University in the Post Campus on Long Island.
Wow.
And I'll be doing a series of lectures. One of them will be on Half the Child, and the others will be on my other book, my first book, Attention All Passengers, a nonfiction expose on the airline industry.
And I'm sure in the
series.
spring we're going to have you back because I want to hear all about Attention All
Absolutely,
Passengers.
I'd love to.
Well-
And, working on some other readings and events in the new year as well. So.
Fantastic. Find us on BetweenTheCoversTV.com so you can keep up with what is going on in your life. Thank you so much for joining us, and happy reading.
Thank you.